What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I can't even know what to say about this right now. These two phones are phones that I had back to back. Okay, the iPhone 6s Plus was a phone I owned, I think in like early 2018 or like late 2017. I think like mid 2017. That's when I owned the iPhone 6s Plus, and I owned it till about the end of 2017. Then I went ahead and switched to the iPhone 7 Plus, and I owned that for a while. Then I switched to the iPhone 10, and the 7 Plus was the phone I just last owned, my last main phone. And what I can tell you is the jump from the 6s Plus to the 7 Plus wasn't a crazy jump, I'll be honest. I did have a 6 Plus before the 6s Plus, and the jump from a 6 Plus to the 6s Plus was crazy. And I think that's kind of the more so trend, and I think it's more obvious now that these upgrades that phone manufacturers are making for their phones aren't necessarily crazy. I mean, with the iPhone 10, the 10s wasn't really crazy. Many other phone manufacturers too, except Samsung, dude. Samsung is doing a killer job right now, but right now, as you can tell by that long intro, we're going to be comparing the iPhone 6s Plus and the iPhone 7 Plus and seeing which one you should buy, whether you should save your money and get an iPhone 6s Plus, or whether you should spend a little bit more money and get an iPhone 7 Plus. So there's a few key differences between these two, but overall, I will still say that the baseline of both of these phones are pretty similar, I'll say. Now, looking around the body, there's a couple key differences to point out, but in terms of the front, they look pretty much the same, but there's some changes, man. The iPhone 6s Plus has obviously the same type of design the 7 Plus does. Touch ID 2 on the bottom, fingerprint sensor, Force Touch, all that stuff, but the 7 Plus actually has a software button on the home button, so it's not an actual like physical button you click. It's a vibration motor that clicks and vibrates whenever you click it. So that's kind of a cool thing. I like that technology, but it's also a bad thing because if you want to replace the screen, you will actually have to go through Apple. If you want to change the whole LCD, you have to go through Apple to change that. You cannot change it yourself, or you will be giving up the home button and Touch ID. Whereas on the 6s Plus, you can replace the LCD and the screen, and you can be able to still use the fingerprint sensor and the home button on both of them. So I think the 7 Plus kind of lacks here in the repairability side of it, but I guess it is what it is. And the 7 Plus does have a front-facing speaker. Kind of the earpiece on top is a front-facing speaker, so it adds a little bit more of like, I guess, stereo effect to it. Not completely, but it's better than what the 6s Plus had. Now with the 7 Plus, with the upgrade between these two phones, this is where Apple actually removed the headphone jack. So going from the 6s Plus to the 7 Plus, you're going to be removing the headphone jack, and that's going to be a huge like discussion point for you guys. You know, me personally, I was really hesitant about doing it. I was really resistant about it, but after I made the switch, like I honestly don't even notice it. Like I just use AirPods all the time, so it's really not even that big of a deal. But if you're still one of those people who can't move on with your life and you're still stuck in the past, then the 6s Plus is one of those phones for you, I'm assuming, because it has more port selections. And obviously with the back, the 7 Plus has a pretty new design. We have the dual camera setup. The 6s Plus had that kind of older design. I think we all know what it looks like by now. So what I'll tell you is, in terms of the outside on both of these phones, they're pretty much similar in the basis of it, the baseline of it, but the 7 Plus, in my opinion, looks so much better. And of course, the 6s Plus, like I said, is a little bit better at repairability. I think I like the design of the 7 Plus more, even with that home button factored in. And the same 5.5 inch screens, 1080p, no AMOLED or anything like that. So pretty much they're pretty similar in a lot of ways. Now, in terms of software, this is where a lot of people might be, this is probably the most controversial side of it. I'll tell you where both of these phones started. So the iPhone 6s Plus started out in iOS 9. The iPhone 7 Plus started in iOS 10.0.1. And this is what I'm thinking, okay? The iPhone 6s Plus might very well last as long as the iPhone 7 Plus in terms of software. But it's a hard thing to judge right now because we're still so, like, I guess we're not just in the software life cycle of these phones, but we're still a couple years out to when these phones are supposed to be end of life. So what I'll tell you is that realistically, the iPhone 6s Plus is supposed to stop at iOS 13. So the next version of iOS, Apple could technically pull the plug on the iPhone 6s Plus. But in my opinion, I think Apple's going to extend the life of it one more year. So it's going to get iOS 13 and iOS 14. Now, I could be wrong, but that's kind of my assumption. Whereas on the iPhone 7 Plus, it's supposed to stop at iOS 14, but very well be the iPhone 7 Plus could it be extended for another year. And they might just do that too. So both of these phones could technically be on the same software or different softwares, but realistically speaking, in the long term of things, the iPhone 7 Plus is supposed to technically last longer in terms of software updates than the iPhone 6s Plus. So that's kind of an important thing to note, man. I always love talking about software, so I'm more of a software man than hardware. So I'll definitely go probably with the 7 Plus because of the longevity of it. Now that's enough of the software and the exterior. Let's go ahead and talk about the performance of both of these phones. So I'm going to say the specs and I'll tell you the performance after, man. The iPhone 6s Plus had the Apple A9 chip, a dual-core CPU, and 2 gigs of RAM. The 6s Plus was the first phone to bring that, which is cool, the 2 gigs of RAM. I freaking love that about it. Where the 7 Plus had the Apple A10 Fusion chip, a quad-core CPU, and 3 gigs of RAM. And I'll tell you right now, man, between both of these phones, the 7 Plus is faster. I'm not saying the 6s Plus is faster or whatever like that. that the 7 Plus is noticeably, I wouldn't say noticeably faster, but you can kind of tell here and there like the 7 Plus is faster. But here's the weird thing, man. If you guys remember back on my channel a while ago, I found out that the 6S Plus for app opening speeds was actually faster than the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8 Plus, and eventually I guess the iPhone 7 Plus too. So that's pretty crazy, and I think that was a glitch in iOS 12 to make the animation seem faster or something. But what I'll tell you is that even if the iPhone 7 Plus is faster, which it is, it's not that noticeable, man. If the iPhone 7 Plus is like a 10 out of 10, the iPhone 6S Plus is easily like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. Like really all it's missing is the extra gig of RAM. Yes, the 7 Plus is faster, whatever, but I really don't think you would notice it all too much. So what I'll tell you is, in terms of day-to-day tasks and everything, you're pretty much going to have somewhat of the same experience. I really do like the home button on the 7 Plus though, so when I click it, it feels like the animations are a little bit smoother. I know that's a stupid thing, but I think it has a lot to do with that vibration motor too. But that might have just been the dumbest thing I ever said. Even in terms of gaming, I mean, everything seems to be fine on both of these. They seem to be running the same type of games at the same type of frame rates. So what I'll tell you is, man, in terms of both of these phones, in terms of performance, I think the 7 Plus is faster, but the 6S Plus is definitely up there as well. Man, that's enough about the performance and everything, bro. Let's go ahead and talk about the cameras on both of these things. So the iPhone 6S Plus has a 12 megapixel sensor, and the 7 Plus has two 12 megapixel sensors, and they both have optical image stabilization. The secondary lens on the iPhone 7 Plus does not have it, but it's really not even that big of a deal. The main sensor does have it, and what I'll tell you is that for just the stock photos that these things take, the 6S Plus I think is very good, but the 7 Plus is just a better version of that. I really don't see too many crazy differences between them. I'm not a photographer myself. I don't really look into photos in depth too much, but what I'll tell you is the 7 Plus definitely has an advantage here because of that secondary lens. You're able to do things like portrait mode, portrait lighting I think is on here, the telephoto lens, so you can zoom in twice as much on a photo than a standard lens, and that's actually really cool. And those are things that you can't necessarily get in a software update. Now, there are some apps in the App Store, I think, that can kind of replicate the bokeh effect, so you can kind of get a portrait mode kind of thing, but it's not going to be the portrait mode officially from Apple. So what I'll definitely say is that the 7 Plus definitely has a better camera sensor and everything like that, but I don't think the 6S Plus is too far off. In terms of the front cameras, the 6S Plus has a 5 megapixel sensor, the 7 Plus has a 7 megapixel sensor, and they both can shoot 1080p videos at 30 frames per second. And before that, I want to add that the 7 Plus and the 6S Plus can both shoot 4K videos on the back sensors, and surprisingly enough, they can shoot all the same video resolutions at the same speed frame rate. So 4K at 30 frames, 1080p at 120 frames too. So I just want to add that to you guys. But in terms of the front cameras, I definitely think that they both look pretty much similar as well. I think Apple made a really big upgrade from the iPhone 6 camera when they went up to the 6S and 6S Plus. So these two, they're only 2 megapixels different, but in terms of the real day usage, I really do think that they're both similar. And again, here's another example. Just because something has more megapixel count doesn't mean it's automatically better. Like, I really don't even see too much of a difference between these. So that's enough about the camera. Let's go ahead and move on to the battery life. And this is actually surprising. The iPhone 6S Plus has a 2,750 mAh battery, where the iPhone 7 Plus has a 2,900 mAh battery. And what I'll tell you is, in my personal usage when I owned both of these phones as main phones, I found that my battery life on the iPhone 7 Plus lasted longer than the one on the iPhone 6S Plus. And at first I was kind of wondering why that was, because the battery sizes, they're about like 150 mAh different. So it's really not like the craziest amounts of difference between these two. And I was thinking that because the iPhone 7 Plus was more spec heavy, like an extra gig of RAM, these things, it'll probably draw more power, but that really wasn't the case. I think the iPhone 6S Plus kind of had a battery problem, not necessarily a problem, but something within the hardware. I think maybe it was the Apple A9 chip that sucked a lot more power than it needed to, where the Apple A10 chip kind of fixed that a little bit. So I definitely do think that the iPhone 7 Plus, in my personal usage, because I owned both of these phones as main phones, was definitely better on the iPhone 7 Plus than on the iPhone 6S Plus. But the 6S Plus battery really isn't even that bad either, but the 7 Plus does have the advantage. And a quick important thing to note, both of these phones do not have any type of wireless charging, so that does kind of suck, but you know what, it is what it is. Now, some other notable things to note: the iPhone 7 Plus does have IP certification, where the iPhone 6S Plus does not, but there were some cases and some people saying that the iPhone 6S Plus did have water resistance around the screen. So you can take that as it is. It was never IP certified, so kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. They both have pretty much the same exact screens, the same exact body. The iPhone 7 Plus does have an extra sensor on the back, the camera sensor, so a really big advantage for the iPhone 7 Plus in my opinion. And to answer the question, man, if it was between these two, which one should you get? I'll tell you, the iPhone 6S Plus you can probably get for around like $150 to maybe $200 on eBay. Whereas the iPhone 7 Plus you could probably find for around $200 to $250, maybe even that $300 mark. This is how I'll break it down. If you're someone who just needs a phone for like an extra year or maybe like a year and a half, you could probably pull off with the 6S Plus. I think it's still pretty good of a phone. I really don't see too much wrong with it. So that's a pretty decent phone as it is. You know, the repairability, you can even get one with a cracked screen. I wouldn't advise you to do that. But if you're pretty good at repairing phones, then I would just say, you know, get one with a cracked screen, pay like a 75% of the price and just buy a screen and replace it. That's what I would do. Whereas on the iPhone 7 Plus, you do not have that luxury of doing that. So if you want to do that, the 6S Plus is a good phone. But if you plan on keeping a phone, you just want to get it for at least like another 2-3 years. You don't want to swap phones all the time, all that crazy stuff. You just want to get it and just go on with your life. The iPhone 7 is probably that phone for you, man. But really, if the iPhone 7 Plus was a 10 out of 10 perfect phone, the iPhone 6S Plus would be an 8.5 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10 at the lowest, but there's really not too much craziness of difference between these two. So if you want to pick up an iPhone 6S Plus or the iPhone 7 Plus, eBay or Craigslist will probably be your cheapest choices, but I will find the cheapest ones I find on Amazon, and I'll link them straight in the description below. They'll be the first links down there. Make sure you get them from those links. A little bit of that sale actually comes back to this channel, and we can do more videos like this and more giveaways and things like that, and it costs you no extra money, so it means so much if you guys could do that. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.